Hi there. We look today in class at our 4.1b notes, which involves other system of equations graphing questions. So questions related to our graphs that you could potentially be asked to answer. And so we worked through two example problems here that I constructed, and with each of these examples we asked essentially the majority of the questions that could potentially be posed within the context of our unit. Okay, so we're going to work through those two right now. The filled out notes are uploaded on my website, and so you could always print those out if you wanted to and follow along with me, or if you would rather just watch the video and have that be your learning experience, that's fine as well. It's obviously however you learn best, and you need to determine that to make sure that you're taking responsibility for your learning. Okay, so here we go. Our first systems here involves our f of x line, which is this line located here, and our g of x line, this line located here. And the first question we're asked is, which point or points are solutions to f of x? Okay? And so a few units ago we talked about what it means for a point to be a solution of a line. And there are two ways you could determine this. The first would be that if you were given the equation of the line, you might plug it in and determine, does it make a true statement? And that's something that we looked at on our 4.5 and 4.6 notes within the context of inequalities. Okay, but if you don't have the equation, like in this case, we don't really know what our equations of f of x and g of x are. We might be able to determine them, but we aren't given them, I should say. And so with this particular problem, we're going to be using the other definition of what it means to have a point be a solution. Okay, that other definition is, for a point to be a solution, it's got to lie on the line. I should say, for a point to be a solution of an equation, it's got to lie on the line. And so when we're looking here at this question, which points are solutions to f of x, what it's actually asking me is, which points are on the line of f of x? Right? And so to answer this one, we're just going to kind of trace along f of x here and name every point that sits on f of x, because each of those points are a possible solution of this equation. Okay, and so as I come alongside f of x here, I see that a lies on that line, as does c, as does f, as does h, and as does j. Okay, so that's how you answer that question. Okay, the second one is the same question, just asking us about g of x. So which points are solutions to g of x? Well, it's asking you which points are on the line of g of x. And so as we trace along g of x here, we've got g and f and e and d and b. Okay, let's see your solutions to g of x. Okay, the next one, also kind of a review question. Well, you actually see that a lot of these are. It asks us to name the point that is the y-intercept of f of x. We've looked at y-intercepts in several different contexts within the last several units. But the one that applies to a graph is, where does it touch the y-axis? That's what it means to be a y-intercept. It means it's touching the y-axis. It's intersecting the y-axis at that point. And so when we want to know, what the y-intercept of f of x is, what we're looking for is, where does f of x touch the y-axis? And so as I look at f of x here and I look at the y-axis, I see that they intersect here at c. Okay. Next question is the same one, just about g of x. Name the point that is the y-intercept of g of x, aka name the point where g of x touches the y-axis. Okay, and so g of x touches the y-axis right here at E. And so that is my y-intercept. Okay, the next one, name the point that is the x-intercept of f of x. Again, a review question from our last unit here. To be an x-intercept means that your y equals 0, or in this case f of x equals 0. And it is an x-intercept if it touches the x-axis. So this is asking, where does f of x touch the x-axis? Well, as I trace f of x here and I look at the x-axis, I see that they touch here at h. And so that is my x-intercept. Okay, next one, same question, just related to g of x. Name the point that is the x-intercept of g of x. Where does it touch the x-axis? G of x touches the x-axis right here at D. Okay. The next two could potentially be a little bit more challenging for people to see at first. They ask us in this first one, name all points where f of x is greater than g of x. Okay, on a number line for f of x to be greater than g of x, f of x would be located more right. If you were looking at numerical values, you'd be looking for a bigger number, right? I mean, that's what it means to be greater than. On a graph, we're looking for the portion of f of x that's above g of x. This is asking us, where is it above? Right? What portion of f of x is above g of x, or where is that located? Okay, and so when we're looking at our graph here, we can see that f of x is sort of split into two pieces here, right, on either side of the intersection with g of x. So you have this piece here from f, so less than f, and you have the piece here that's greater than f, right? I should say greater than, what would that be, 2, x equals 2, so greater than x equals 2 in the part that's less than x equals 2. Okay, and g of x is the same thing. We've got a part here that's greater than x equals 2 and a part here that's less than x equals 2, right? Okay, and so with this particular problem, when they're asking us where is f of x above g of x, we're going to be comparing those parts. Which section of my f of x line is above my g of x? And so for this one, I typically like to put some sort of line on my paper, a vertical line, just to see who's literally above at that point. And so if I went ahead and put in my vertical line here, I would see that at this point, my f of x part of my line is above my g of x part of my line, which means that at this point in the graph, f of x is greater than g of x. And as I move my little line here, f of x continues to be greater than g of x at all of these points, right? F of x is always greater than g of x on this side of our intersection. Okay, and so when they're asking us where is f of x greater than g of x, they're asking for that part right there. Right? That's where f of x is above my g of x line. And the points that are on that line, or on that section, are C and A. Okay, where x is less than 2. Okay, but the next one they're asking me, name all the points where g of x is greater than f of x, where g of x is above f of x. And so again, we're going to be looking at this graph for that value. Well, we know it's not over here, so I have a pretty good guess it's probably over here. And if I put my line on here, sure enough, I can see that my g of x line is above my f of x line at that point. G of x is above f of x here. And so this is the location where g of x is greater than my f of x. Okay, and the point that's on that section is G. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put G down here. Last question here. Name the point where f of x equals g of x. This is a review back from the very beginning of this unit, which is for two equations to equal. To find that point where the two equations equal, it means that it's where the two graphs touch. Right, and so when I'm looking at this graph here, my two lines, I should say, intersect here at F. And so F is the point where f of x equals g of x. We're looking here for our intersection. Okay? Okay, so the next one, when we did it in class, I gave your classmates a little bit more freedom here with this, giving them some time to think through it, and then I would ask for who had the answer, and we would move to the second one, and again kind of pause, give everyone a chance to answer it. I would ask for the answer, and we'd move on to the third. Okay, and so I'm going to recommend that as we work through this, you sort of mirror that to give yourself a chance to practice this. And so when I read through the question, I'm going to go ahead and pause myself, but if you need to, pause the video if you think you're going to need a little bit more time to answer it. See if you can answer it on your own, and then start it again and check your answer. That way you can get kind of a feel for whether or not you're understanding this material, and you get to practice it on your own rather than just watching me kind of work through the problem. Okay? So here we go. With this second graph, we have our f of x line and our g of x line, and our first question is, which points are solutions to f of x? Okay, so here's where you'd pause it if you needed to. Go ahead and answer that, and then start it again when you're ready. Okay, so the points are solutions if they lie on f of x. Well, here's f of x. We have b, d, j, k, and n. All of those are the points that sit on f of x. Okay, next one, which points are solutions to g of x? Go ahead and see if we can answer that one. Okay, so g of x is right here. If they're solutions, they lie on g of x. We have a, c, d, l, and m. Okay, next one. Name the point that is the y-intercept of f of x. See if you can answer that one. Okay, so if it's a y-intercept, it's got to touch the y-axis. And so we're looking for, where does f of x touch the y-axis? Here's f of x, here's the y-axis. They touch at k. Okay, next one. Name the point that is the y-intercept of g of x. See if you can answer this one. Okay, if it's a y-intercept, it must touch the y-axis. So where does g of x touch the y-axis? Here's g of x, here's the y-axis. They touch here at L. And so that's my y-intercept. Okay. Next one, name the point that is the x-intercept, or where y, or f of x, equals 0 of f of x. Name the x-intercept of f of x. Go ahead and try this one. Okay, if it's an x-intercept, it's got to touch the x-axis. So here's f of x, here's the x-axis. They touch here at j. Okay, next one. Name the point that is the x-intercept, or where y equals 0, or g of x equals 0, of g of x. Okay, again, an x-intercept is where you touch the x-axis. So where does g of x touch the x-axis? Here's g of x, here's the x-axis. They touch at c. Okay, next one. Name all the points where f of x is greater than g of x. See if you can answer this one, and I'll give you a hint. For this particular one, you should have 3 answers. Okay, so if f of x is greater than g of x, that means f of x is above g of x. Well, f of x is above g of x on this section of graph here. Right, everything greater than x equals -2. Okay, so right here, this is where f of x is greater than g of x, and that is at j, k, and n. Okay. Next one, name all the points where g of x is greater than f of x. Give this one a shot. Okay. G of x is greater than f of x over here, where x is less than -2, all of these points over here. G of x is greater than f of x at A and C. Okay, last one. Name the point where f of x equals g of x. See if you can give that one a shot. Where does f of x equal g of x? Okay, f of x equals g of x at their intersection, which is right here at D. And there you go.